Well, I'm sure you read the title of the video, and no, that is not clickbait. It's a little change of pace for my channel this time around, but it's to cover something that I think is very critical and fairly widespread, and I've already taken personal action to mitigate this on my own home network, and I want to encourage you to do the same, but we'll get to that in just a few minutes. Big picture, we're talking about companies being banned in the United States and a cyber threat waiting at the digital doorway of your home, or as we like to call them, routers. As of last week, TikTok, the social media app that hosts those short-form videos, was officially banned for a bit in the United States. I say a bit because President Trump put a stay on the outright ban for a little bit, and we have yet to see what happens once that stay runs out. ByteDance, TikTok's owners, are supposed to sell TikTok to a U.S. corporation if they want to continue to operate in the United States. But from what I've heard, ByteDance has no interest in doing so. So Trump may only be postponing the inevitable. I don't know. As an aside, just so we note how these things play out, because it will become more important later, though the ban is not in effect at the moment, Apple and Google both took the TikTok app out of their app stores, and they're still not putting it back, even though the ban is, on hold. Keep that in mind. Now, the TikTok ban comes amid personal and national security concerns, as well as privacy concerns, and the app's ties to China. It's kind of a trifecta. Critics of the app claimed it was snooping around and collecting data from users' devices that it had no business collecting. And it was also claimed that the algorithm that fed videos to users was damaging to the younger audience the app attracted through, pattern forming and that kind of stuff. It's a well-known and established fact that companies based in China must cooperate with their government if the government requests any and all data. That alone is concerning. However, it gets worse. International relations between China and the U.S. have been icy at best lately. That's not a surprise. But we're talking about bans or potential bans today and what they mean for you, specifically as they relate to your router. And that brings us to the subject of today's topic, TP-Link. TP-Link is best known as a consumer-level network hardware manufacturer based in China. They also produce items under the Tapo name. It currently controls 65% of the market share of home routers. That means there's a very good chance you have one in your home right now, granting your devices access to the internet and to the other connected devices on your network. It may even be serving this video to you right now. The irony is not lost on me. And recently, the US government seems to be considering a ban on TP-Link. Specifically, the routers. Now, I know you read the title, and again, no, it is absolutely not clickbait. I do think you should replace your router as soon as possible, just like I did. This isn't a knee-jerk reaction, but my conclusion after going over the evidence available. But before we look over that evidence, I wanted to give you a little background as to who I am and why I find this so concerning. My entire professional career has been spent either in IT or broadcasting, both radio and television, or some combination of those two. All told, I've spent over a decade as an IT professional. I earned an MCP and MCSA from Microsoft and worked from level 1, where I was desktop support or help desk technician, up to a level 2 tech where I was managing and maintaining servers, and even started to touch level 3, meaning I was designing and building servers in an enterprise setting. Shortly after that, I changed positions in my company to a management role outside of IT, and I've been there since, but I've always kept one foot in the IT world. I enjoy those conversations with the IT department. Now this is my router. It's a TP-Link Archer C7 that I got off of Amazon, probably like many of you. And it's been a good performer. I've never really had any issues with it. I even went as far as to get a Wi-Fi extender. This works on TP-Link's mesh technology. It also worked pretty well. Got a little warm sometimes, but that really wasn't a big deal. It just would lock up every blue moon maybe, and it would need to be restarted. But actually, a firmware update I think fixed that, if I remember correctly. But now, this and that router are effectively doorstops. Headed to the nearest recycling center as soon as I can get them there. And they have been replaced by a router from a company that is not based in China, namely ASUS. They're based in Taiwan. Now, there were several reasons that I did this. We've just been through the Tik-Tok drama, and now it seems the US government is putting a target on TP-Link routers. When I decided to replace my router just a couple weeks ago, my first and foremost concern was security. There are fairly recent reports of Chinese government-sponsored hackers using TP-Link routers to deploy cyber attacks around the globe. Hence why the US government is considering a ban. Microsoft's Azure platform was the particular target of this attack. The attack vector utilized to take over these routers has not yet been disclosed, or possibly not discovered, but I don't believe that. I think they know, they're just not saying. And while unpatched vulnerabilities are an issue with pretty much every router that you'll ever have, I think there's more to it than just a unpatched vulnerability. In fact, just a few days ago, on January 14th, the Department of Justice released a statement saying it was granted a warrant to go and remotely remove the PlugX malware from over 4,200 infected computers worldwide. They said the computers were infected by a hacking group hired by the Chinese government. I have no idea if there is any connection here whatsoever, and I'm not saying there is. But what I am saying is that I certainly do not want to put out a welcome mat for foreign governments to invade my network or devices. Now, it looks like there might be something we'll call variable X for now, because it's an unknown. We know the US government is interested in banning TP-Link routers. We know TP-Link routers have been used to launch cyber attacks. After considering the Huawei situation a few years ago, we can use these known values in this equation and determine the value of X. Now, IT security firms who have been doing this for a long time are hinting at this as well, saying that while the US government hasn't acknowledged it, the fact that they want an outright ban of TP-Link routers means they probably know something, but haven't released it yet. Oh, Huawei? Let me fill you in quickly. For a while in the US, Huawei was a top manufacturer of Android phones. It also made mobile 5G networking equipment, the kind used by mobile phone companies. But going into 2020, with relations cooling between the US and China, it was put under a microscope. What was found, once things were brought into focus, was unpleasant. US officials said they had discovered backdoors installed into Huawei's networking equipment, the kind of backdoor normally used by law enforcement for surveillance and evidence collection and things of that nature. As of March of 2021, Huawei was effectively banned from doing business in the United States. And the US wasn't alone in doing so. Sweden also banned Huawei from doing business in their country, citing similar reasoning and concerns. So there is a precedent of a Chinese company installing a backdoor in order to gain access to something they shouldn't have access to just a few years ago. Now, my second thought when replacing my router was that the ban had or has a high likelihood of happening. Hear me out. This is probably going to happen. Just like Huawei and now TikTok, we know the US government is taking a much stronger position against Chinese-owned businesses, specifically anything that touches the IT sector. So if the ban happens, that means the end of official support for all TP-Link routers in the US. No more firmware upgrades, no more warranty service, no more access to their forums, nothing. And remember what I said about the TikTok apps in Apple's App Store and Google's App Store? That comes into play here, because those apps that you use to manage your TP-Link router, they're going to disappear. you won't have access to them either. And don't expect retailers to take these routers back, especially if they're just outside the return window, but they might make it worse than that too. Now third, when I replaced my router, I was thinking if a ban does happen, and it probably will, there's going to be a run on routers. And I think it could lead to shortages. I don't think routers are, something that get mass produced per se. Are there a lot of them? Yeah, but I mean, how many routers does one person go through in a year? You use one for several years at least. So shortages, unfortunately, are probably going to happen, and also, unfortunately, they will probably lead to price gouging. It's happened before with game consoles, RAM, graphics cards, pick your poison. So I thought it wise to get ahead of the curve and swap it out now. And that is my advice to you. Now, if you don't have a TP-Link router and you don't think you need to replace it, that's great. But there might be some security measures that you want to take anyway. If your router offers a guest network, and most of them do these days, put all of your IoT devices on that network and not your personal one. Smart light bulbs, smart plugs, smart toilets, whatever, all of that stuff goes on the guest network. This is to limit the access that they have to the rest of your devices on the network that might contain sensitive information you don't want getting out. Because frankly, light bulbs don't get off, they just don't get firmware updates like ever. And if they do, you've got to turn them off and on 5 times, and then they flash 3 times and you turn them off and on again. They're not often updated. You don't want that kind of stuff hanging out on your private network. Now, if your router has the option of allowing the guest network to access local devices, turn that off. You do not want that on. Now, usually it's off by default, but it's always good to check. My current router does have that option. It was off by default, and I'm not turning it on. Now, also, when you replace your old router, if you are replacing your router, be sure to do a factory reset to wipe it of all the data before you dispose of it. Failing to do this could mean that your network information, like the admin password, which you did change when you put the router in your house, right? You did go in and change the default password, right? That password, which you did change, could get out there because, well, someone else could pick up your router, plug it in, and start figuring out how to get that data. It's especially concerning if it's one of those goofy routers that makes you put your address in. Now, I'm not trying to be an alarmist, because that's not helpful. But if I see an iceberg on the horizon, and this is a pretty big iceberg, and I don't call it out, then I feel like I have failed you. So, iceberg ahead. Act accordingly. Now, I've left an affiliate link in the description of this video for the router that I ended up purchasing if you would like to do the same. I'm very happy with it. It comes with a mobile app, and it integrates well with a Pi-hole if you happen to run one of those. So I highly recommend it. And for you ham guys, if you want to run one of the hotspots for either DMR or Yaesu System Fusion or whatever, I've had no issues with that. I know I have a lot of hams on this channel. Well, I've certainly hoped that you found this video informative and helpful. What's your take on the whole back and forth between China and the US? I've been thinking about it a lot. Are you concerned about other devices in your home? I think I am. I'm even thinking about 3D printers because most of them come from China and a lot of them are connected. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for this video. I really do appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me for a bit. I do not take that for granted. You welcome me into your home, and I treasure that. And remember, when it comes to tech, I've got you covered.